Carlube TVR Challenge heads home, almost. Oulton Park, the circuit closest to the company's Blackpool base, is the host for round 9 of the championship. And it was all action last time at Thruxton. The grid complete, everybody ready for action, away they go. The cars blast off to the first corner, contact already. Lee Caroline edges over on Peter Wheeler. Wheeler hits the back of Tim Hood's car, rides into the air. Lee Caroline right up with them as well, and now Caroline's going to make it almost 3 wide as they come up towards Church. He's going to go through and take second. Can he get the lead as well? Yes, he can. The black and orange flag again there for Tim Hood. Now is this Richard Hayes' chance to put the move on him as they go down towards Allard? Yes, it is, and easily through there. But the reigning champion is getting closer to a second successive crown. Lee Caroline wins at Thruxton. He comes across the line. Second is going to be David Mason, who powers now up past the pits to take the checkered flag. And Richard Hay, having started 7th on the grid, comes through for 3rd. The championship then certainly heading Lee Caroline's way now. A 32-point advantage over Richard Hay, with David Mason only 6 points back in 3rd. New drivers in the championship this weekend include Mini 7 racer Joe Tandy.
It's quite a culture shock, you know, coming from a 100 horsepower front-wheel drive car to one of these monsters, so to speak. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. It's good stuff.
Another newcomer this weekend, Austrian rally driver Rupert Schachinger.
I know the new owner of TVR since, I think, 5 years very well, and he invited me to come here to drive with a TVR, and it's a nice experience. It's a new car. It's something different between Austria, where I'm driving the Austrian Rally Championship with a Mitsubishi Lancer Evolution. It's a little bit easier to handle. It's a 4-wheel drive car, and so it's a very, very strange feeling to drive with this powerful Tuscan.
Up to the grid, pole position here at Oulton Park for race 1, Richard Hay by over 4/10 of a second.
I wouldn't say it's comfortable. These things are a bit of a handful around here, but great fun. And qualifying went well, yeah.
Philip Keane qualifies 2nd there in the green car, the 2nd row, Lee Caroline, and then David Mason. Out go the lights, the first of the 2 races of over 20 minutes duration gets underway. Dreadful start by Hay, good start by Caroline in comparison. Down towards Old Hall Corner they come, Keane leads, 2nd is David Mason. Joe Tandy up on the inside there, he gets ahead of the reigning champion then. So Joe Tandy in his first TVR Tuscan race making a pretty good getaway. He's up into 4th place as they come down towards Cascades. Philip Keane leads them. It's the short Foster 2nd, and that's Joe Tandy going off, spins through the gravel, round he goes. The car facing in the right direction, he guns the engine. We've had a lot of rain here this morning, the grass is still wet, the road's still damp offline, and Joe Tandy recovering after a wild old moment. Philip Keane leading David Mason, Richard Hay 3rd, and Lee Caroline 4th now. Going through there, number 58, Rupert Schachinger, the Austrian, spending his time this year taking part in the Suzuki Cup, a mixture of races and rallies and hill climbs. Last year he was the runner-up in the Austrian Group N Rally Championship in a Mitsubishi Lancer, fighting his way round Lodge Corner as Philip Keane leads over the line. In 2nd place, David Mason, 3rd is Richard Hay, and this is a replay of Lee Caroline. Down towards Cascades for the first time, he gets sideways, and Joe Tandy goes off. Lap 2 out of 20 minutes. The top 4 bunching up behind Philip Keane. You can see David Mason there in 2nd place. In 3rd is Richard Hay. In 4th is Lee Caroline. They come through Knickerbrook then, through the right-hander. And Richard Hay there looking to try to attack Mason for 2nd and keep Lee Caroline at bay. Lee right up behind him as they come up Clay Hill, heading towards Druids now. The 2 of them absolutely nose to tail. Lee Caroline, who we know can be forceful when he has to be, looking for a way past Richard Hay. Squeal of tires, somebody off there. That's Tim Hood going off. Tim Hood spins through the gravel, and that's Rupert Schachinger going off in a very great race of knots, thunders into the tyre wall. Rupert Schachinger in his first TVR Tuscan race ploughs off. The leaders come across the line. We've got Lee Caroline 3rd, have we now? Yes, we have. Caroline's ahead of Hay. So race order, Keane ahead of Mason, ahead of Caroline, ahead of Hay as they turn through Old Hall Corner. And Rupert Schachinger bringing what was an immaculate TVR Tuscan back to the pit lane. He's done pretty well, actually, to get that mobile again. You can tell he's a rally driver, never give up. Keeps out of everybody's way. If anything's going to drop off the car, he'll let it drop onto the grass there. They're bringing it back, so the mechanics have got yet more time to work on it. Into the pit lane he comes. And Rupert Schachinger's race is at an end, and Tim Hood there pushing the car away with the help of the marshals. Tim Hood sadly going no further. Here's a replay of Rupert Schachinger. Ahead of him, look, he sees Tim Hood get it wrong, and he gets totally sideways, fights the car for the first part, then the back comes round, and bang, off he goes into the tyre wall. Lee Caroline right up behind David Mason now. Mason in turn stuck behind Philip Keane. And now Lee Caroline making his move on the inside line, coming down towards Lodge Corner. Lee Caroline squeezes through. David Mason gives him racing room, and Lee Caroline, in clearly a quicker car there, goes through up into second place. Over the start and finish line. Heading now down towards Old Hall Corner. Caroline going for the lead on the inside of Phil Keane, and he's done it. Through he goes. Lee Caroline then up now into the lead, and look ahead. You'll see the new, shorter version of the TVR Tuscan, Andy Holden's car. It had a big off in qualifying. They didn't manage to repair the back of the car in time. He's running as an open wheeler effectively. They're going through is Philip Keane. He's second, looking to get his lead back. The race leader, Lee Caroline. Keane second. In third place is David Mason. Caroline not yet inching away too much from Philip Keane, and Keane still under pressure from David Mason. We're about to lap former chairman Peter Wheeler as he comes through Druids. Peter keeps out of the way, having sold the company of late to Nikolai Smolensky, still enjoying his racing now without the hassle of running a company. And Peter Wheeler drops down towards Lodge Corner, being lapped by Richard Hay. The three leaders, Concertina up once again. Out of Lodge Corner, up Dear Lee, past the pits now. Lee Caroline leading, Philip Keane looking to get the lead back and also keep at bay there, David Mason. Towards Old Hall Corner they come. Keane having a look on the inside, but he's not going to be able to go through there. Out of Old Hall Corner. Now the run once more down towards Cascades. Richard Hay trying to join back up with them again. But clearly Richard's car not as well set up for these conditions, with the road being drying but still damp offline as one or two others. Rod Barrett there keeping out of the way. The three leaders dart past. Caroline, then Keane, then Mason being the order. Philip Keane, who's had a couple of wins this year. David Mason, who's had a couple of wins. Lee Caroline, 6 wins to his credit. Into Druids they come, the top three still tied together. But Lee Caroline is the man you'd probably put your money on here to win the race ultimately. He drops down now towards Lodge. In second place behind him is the all-green car of Philip Keane. In third place is David Mason. And David, the former Superstock champion, looking now to try and unsettle Philip Keane. But whilst he and Keane are squabbling for second, that's going to enable Richard Hay possibly to close and also let Lee Caroline get away. Mason having another look on the inside there, right up alongside Phil Keane going through the corner. They just avoid touching. Philip Keane slams the door. There is what's left of Andy Holden's car. The series scrutineer John Crook says, yeah, all right, you can race it like that, all taped up. All the other drivers have had to sign a piece of paper saying they're happy for the car to run. It looks fine from the front, but from the back, it's had what the paddock is calling the Moscow chop. No rear bodywork, the wheels in the fresh air, but Andy Holden, at least he's in the race. Down towards Knickerbrook. Lee Caroline, the race leader, about to put a lap on Joe Tandy. Joe, remember, was ahead of Lee Caroline on the first lap, then had that big spin. And I think that reality has caught up with the Mini 7 racer. It really is a culture shock going from the Mini 7 to a TVR Tuscan. But Joe Tandy there keeps out of the way, lets the leaders go by. And with every passing lap here, he gets more used to the car. It'll be interesting to see how he goes in race 2. He lets his teammate David Mason go by. Mason again having a look on the inside there to try and get past Philip Keane, and he does it this time. Through, under braking for Lodge Corner. Out of Dearly, Caroline, then Mason, then Keane. And Richard Hay falling a long way back in 4th place now. Around Old Hall Corner, this race, the shorter of the two, lasting for 20 minutes rather than a set number of laps. They're coming towards the end of it, but there's still another couple of laps left in it, I reckon, and that could just give Philip Keane the chance he needs to get past David Mason. Lee Caroline now looking as though win number 7 is going his way. The gap between him and the opposition just enough for him to consolidate now. There's Richard Hay, 4th. Richard's had a pretty good season compared to last year. He's had 4 wins, but at the moment, not on the tail of the top 3. And there is Philip Keane again, almost pushing David Mason up towards Druids Corner. Mason, who, like Lee Caroline, came from oval racing, from mini stocks initially. Philip Keane, who's come through karting and the BARC Formula Renault Championship, which he was the champion in a couple of years ago. And Keane looking to go GT racing in the future. David Mason raced in the British GT Championship at Thruxton in the Noble, run by Martin Short. Lee Caroline's done some long-distance races for TVRs as well, of course, and the second-place battle side-by-side into Old Hall. Philip Keane there trying to go the long way round on the outside of David Mason, using all of the curb and the grass creek there, but he hasn't been able to make the move work. Mason hangs on to second. Lee Caroline there goes ahead once again of Peter Wheeler as he drops down towards the right-hander of Foster's. the shorter Foster circuit here at Oulton Park, which is certainly catching 1 or 2 out like David Mason when you find the damp part offline. Gives very good racing, this circuit, with the shorter lap, the cars closer together for longer. But that was a big old slide from David Mason. That's Tim Hood back in the race. Remember, we saw him pushing the car away a little while ago. Well, he's got it back onto the circuit. He's not going to do enough laps to be classified as a finisher, I don't think, but at least he's having some track time. As down towards Lodge comes Caroline. He's being chased by David Mason, and Mason still having to make the car wide to keep at bay Philip Keane. Out of Deer Leap they come now, over the start and finish line once again. Lee Caroline comes past us then, second and third behind. You can see Mason and Keane heading now onto the last lap of the race, in towards Old Hall corner. Mason brakes late, the car slides, he catches it, he powers out of the corner. He has now got up alongside him though. Philip Keane heading now towards Denton's, but Keane can't quite do it there. Now left through Cascade, then stand on everything and turn right into Foster's, and Philip Keane lunges up on the inside. He's done it, clips the curb, but he goes through. Philip Keane muscles his way up alongside David Mason, makes him make his own arrangements and get out of the way. Philip Keane says, I'm coming through. He takes second place away midway around the last lap of the race here. It's lap 20 at Oulton Park. The cars at Druids now led by Lee Caroline, and Caroline is heading for win number 7 of the season. Towards Lodge corner he comes. He's being chased by Philip Keane, and David Mason has dropped a long way back on this last lap as they might have a problem. Out of Lodge, up they come through Deer Leap now. It's going to be a win for Lee Caroline. He's getting closer to a second successive championship. There's the checkered flag. Lee Caroline wins, and he's very happy about that, and you can understand why. But second over the line is Philip Keane, and finishing third is David Mason. Richard Hay takes fourth ahead of Darren Dowling and Andy Holden's short car. Peter Wheeler 7th, and Joe Tandy celebrates his Tuscan debut with 8th.
Yeah, Joe Tandy lost it down Cascades, right in front of me, and I only just missed him. But the usual old story, he shouldn't have been in front of me anyway, because I got a bad start. I'll just make things hard work for myself. But then once I caught them guys, I passed them quite easy. But then I couldn't seem to pull away from them, so I just tried not to look in my mirrors and keep just driving my race. And gladly we come home first, so it's good.
We lost a bit of time after about the 4th lap. I lost a bit of traction for a few laps. I'm not quite sure what went on there, but the car came back on towards the end of the race again. I was able to get back past Mason, but it's a bit strange.
Yeah, it was looking quite good at one point. Once I got past Phil, it looked like I was gaining on Phil for a few laps. On Lee for a few laps. I think I was probably pushed a little bit too hard. Gave the rear tyres a bit too much grief. We're going to try and sort something with the rear suspension so it doesn't work them so hard for the next race. We did get fastest lap, which I suppose is one consolation, but everybody wants to win, don't they?
And Lee Caroline is the winner. There's another race coming up right after the break. Oulton Park, race 2 of round 9 of the TVR Challenge. Lee Caroline, having won race 1, is on pole position. Well, we know that traditionally he makes duff starts. Is he going to make another one here? He's got Philip Keane alongside him. Row 2, David Mason and Richard Hay. Lights out, away they go. Who makes the best start then on the way down towards Old Hall corner? Good getaway by David Mason, but Lee Caroline is defending. And Lee Caroline, for a change, makes a very good start, and he leads at the first corner. That does not happen terribly often, but Lee Caroline here has done a very good job of hanging onto the advantage right the way around Old Hall. In second place then is David Mason, and up into third has come Darren Dowling. Down they come towards Foster's for the first time. In 4th place is Philip Keane, 5th is Joe Tandy, and 6th is Richard Hay. Hay, I'm afraid, not making a good start, but Lee Caroline, the championship leader, is exactly where he wants to be now. Up Clay Hill for the first time, on board with Joe Tandy here. The cars go light as they crest the brow of the hill. Then we're going to set them up, slow them down for Druids, and swing right through the double apex right-hander. Lee Caroline then exactly where he needs to be. The pole position man leading the race, Darren Dowling from 5th on the grid, having a good first lap here. And Joe Tandy losing out to Richard Hay, who comes through. Dowling locking up ahead as well. Puff of tyre smoke as they came into Lodge. Tandy accelerating his way now up out of Deer Leap. Bit of cement dust put down there to soak up some oil spilt earlier on in the day. Lee Caroline leading. David Mason is right up behind him though. The two of them nose to tail now. 3rd is Dowling, 4th is Keane, 5th is Hay, 6th is Tim Hood now getting up alongside Joe Tandy. A big slide there for Rupert SCHACHINGER. We know what happened to him in the first race. He had a big off. The TVR mechanics have worked wonders to rebuild the car. Now he's got to repay them by bringing it home for a half-decent result. Caroline and Mason through Knickerbrook, powering their way uphill now. Over the brow of the hill goes Lee Caroline, and he's turning his way now underneath the trees towards Druids. Great circuit for the TVR Tuscan Challenge, the Oulton Park circuit. Dauntingly fast corners, plenty of undulations. It's a real challenge, a real handful to drive one of these cars quickly round Oulton. And Lee Caroline's car quivering under braking leads. David Mason second again. Darren Dowling there locking up a little bit under braking as he comes down towards Lodge. He's got Philip Keane looking for a way past him. They're going to overlap as they come over the line. Philip Keane on the inside line there for Old Hall corner. Darren Dowling tries to brave it out with him, but as they head into the braking area, Philip Keane, his car quivering under braking, goes through. Philip Keane grabs third place now. Darren Dowling down to fourth, and Richard Hay is not that far adrift now. Hay, who is Caroline's main opposition in the championship, is starting to lose touch with Caroline as far as this race is concerned and as far as the championship is concerned, but he's not given up yet as far as trying to get himself onto the podium is concerned. Lee Caroline hard at work. Turning his way now through Druids, heading underneath the bridge in a moment, down towards Lodge corner. He's going to stand on the brakes, down through the gears. Turn into the right-hander, conscious that David Mason is right up behind him. Philip Keane third, Darren Dowling fourth, Richard Hay fifth, Tim Hood sixth. Tim normally goes well on fairly daunting circuits like this, or Croft or Knock Hill, and he's not doing a bad job here either. Up over the line he comes, Richard Hay now looking to make a move on Darren Dowling on the inside into Old Hall. Hay should be able to go through, he does go through. Scrabbles by on the inside there. Richard Hay goes ahead of Darren Dowling. Dowling trying to fight back though. Down through Denton's into the left-hander of Cascades they come, and Richard Hay at the moment is being able to make sure that Darren Dowling can't get back onto terms with him. Lee Caroline though, the race leader, still being able to maintain his small advantage over David Mason. Philip Keane possibly the next one to watch though, to see whether Keane now can do anything about getting onto terms with the top two. David Mason turning through Druids, getting sideways, going off there. Big slide for David Mason. He catches it, gets back onto the circuit now, but Philip Keane goes past him up into second place. Mason trying to defend from Richard Hay, but he hasn't got the momentum really or the speed, and so Hay comes through into third place, and David Mason is down to fourth. David is always very quick. Occasionally he has his wild moments. Remember that big spin at Croft earlier on in the year? He's had another one there, lucky to catch it. One or two other people have been off into the gravel permanently or into the tyres at Druids when they've had moments like that. David Mason still going as Darren Dowling and Tim Hood come past the pits together. Tim Hood trying to go ahead here, down towards Old Hall. Dowling on the inside, Hood on the outside. Accelerating now out of the right-hander of Old Hall, and then the run down towards Cascades. Now second and third, Philip Keane versus Richard Hay. They're powering their way uphill whilst they're going to battle for second. Of course, Lee Caroline is building up his advantage all the while. It's going to be an 8th win of the year for Caroline. But here for second and third, Keane and Hay are still tied together. This race, the longer of the two at Oulton Park, it's 22 minutes around the Foster's circuit. The clock ticking away, but Richard Hay getting closer and closer to Philip Keane. Having a look here on the inside as they drop down towards Lodge, but the door is closed. Philip Keane hangs on to second place, but for how much longer? Because Richard Hay, who was a rather distant sixth at the start, is now gunning for second as they come over the line. Down towards Old Hall corner, headlights on, or headlight on Hay's car. Is he going to be able to go through? Yes, he is! Finds the inside line, easily through there on the inside. Philip Keane gave him enough racing room. Richard Hay up into second, down to third is Philip Keane, and don't ignore David Mason behind them, because Mason wants to try and get onto terms with them as well now. Richard Hay turning his way through Foster's, up now towards Knickerbrook. He's got himself ahead of Philip Keane. Can he pull away and catch this man, Lee Caroline? Caroline on his way to what looks like being win number 8 of the season. Out of Druids, down towards Lodge corner. The reigning champion, possibly to be a double champion, comes into Lodge. There's only 2 more races to run in the series after this, both on the Brands Hatch Indy circuit, and Lee Caroline will be going there with an increased championship advantage over Richard Hay up into second place, but he's not getting away from Philip Keane. Keane staying with him. David Mason doing his level best to get onto terms. He's fourth as they come over the line. Out of Old Hall corner, the gap looking to the eye a little bit less between Caroline and Hay. Richard Hay all the while having to make the car very wide indeed, because Philip Keane is right up behind him. Richard Hay, mysteriously, despite being able to catch and pass Philip Keane, cannot get away. Whether he's now developing a problem, I don't know, but certainly Richard Hay is not being able to do very much about Lee Caroline. He's having to work very hard to keep Philip Keane behind him. Down towards Old Hall, Andy Holden on the inside of Joe Tandy here. Joe Tandy on the outside line. The former Mini Stocks World Champion, Mini 7 racer he has been for the last few seasons, but Andy Holden, the one-time caterer driver, goes through in his lighter, shorter car after its big off in qualifying, and Andy Holden's tank tape special then, up now ahead of Joe Tandy. The race leaders come down towards Lodge Corner. The race leader is Lee Caroline still, but the battle for second, Richard Hay having to sit in the middle of the road there and make sure Philip Keane can't find a way past him. It's raging on, this fight for second. They come now up towards the completion of another lap, onto the last lap indeed this time. Hay goes through, there behind him is Keane. Lee Caroline, can't see him being caught now. The race leader set, as I say, for win number 8. Richard Hay going through in second position. In third is Philip Keane, tucked up behind him. Down towards Cascades they come, the pair of them then still squabbling. Hay ahead of Keane. Remember Keane's move on Mason at Foster's on the last lap of race 1. Can he do it again here? Out of Knickerbrook goes Lee Caroline. It looks as though in the background Richard Hay has been able to hang on to that second place. And Lee Caroline charging his way up Clay Hill now. Left past the water tower, then right into Druids. Rod Barrett ahead, who's going to be lapped in a moment. And then Lee Caroline will come down towards Lodge Corner. Rod Barrett looks in his mirror, waves him by. Behind, the fight for second is going to go right the way down to the wire. Richard Hay is ahead of Philip Keane, but he's not out of the woods yet because Philip has got another chance to challenge coming into Lodge Corner. Lee Caroline, though, is set for that 8th win of the year. The checker flag is at the ready. Lee Caroline wins the 2 races at Oulton Park. Second over the line is Richard Hay. Third over the line is Phil Keane. And Lee Caroline has done it again. He's got one hand on the championship now. 2 very important wins here at Oulton Park. Behind the top 3, David Mason comes home 4th ahead of Darren Dowling, and then Tim Hood, Andy Holden 7th, and Joe Tandy takes another 8th place.
Wow, I got off the start line, amazing. It's funny being out front first corner, and I just got out in the lead, and in the mid-race there, I sort of got settled down too much and was running at too slow a pace because I looked in my mirror and thought, God, they're catching me, so I had to sort of knuckle down and have another fast 5 laps, otherwise I think they would have caught me. So I sort of like dazed off in mid-race there, but it plays on your mind. You keep thinking, you hear things in the engine, and you've got too much time to think when you're out up front on your own, so I like being in the mix of the bunch, really.
To be honest, I think if we got a better start, started a bit higher up, if I hadn't made the errors that we did with the setup in the first race, we'd have been much better off, but unfortunately it wasn't to be, so we have to go and try and win the last 2 anyway and see what we can do at Brands Hatch, but I think Lee's got the championship pretty much sewn up now. He's stretched further ahead, and all he's got to do is finish the first race there, and he's won it.
So 2 more races to go. Lee Caroline very nearly the champion. He's 40 points up on Richard Hay. David Mason is 3rd. Then Philip Keane ahead of Tim Hood, with Andy Holden, Ben Samuelson and Peter Wheeler rounding out the top 8. The final 2 races of the 2004 Carlube TVR Challenge here at Brands Hatch. The championship to be decided, and Lee Caroline is the man who won it last year and is odds-on favourite to do it again. And he had 2 wins last time at Oulton Park. Out go the lights. The first of the 2 races of over 20 minutes duration gets underway. Dreadful start by Hay, good start by Caroline in comparison. Wheel of Time, somebody off there, that's Tim Hood going off. Tim Hood spins through the gravel, and that's RUPERT SCHACHINGER going off in a very great race and knocks thunders into the tyre wall. And now Lee Caroline making his move on the inside line, coming down towards Lodge Corner. Lee Caroline squeezes through. David Mason gives him racing room, and Lee Caroline, in clearly a quicker car there, goes through up into 2nd place. Lee Caroline, though, is set for that 8th win of the year. The checker flag is at the ready. Lee Caroline wins the 2 races at Oulton Park. And Lee Caroline has done it again. Got one hand on the championship now. So 2 more races to go. Lee Caroline very nearly the champion. He's 40 points up on Richard Hay. David Mason is 3rd. Then Philip Keane ahead of Tim Hood, with Andy Holden, Ben Samuelson and Peter Wheeler rounding out the top 8. Up to the grid for race 1. Ballymackiller, the new UK Formula Ford champion, lines up on pole for his first ever Tuscan race.
Yeah, it's good. It's quite big difference to TVR from Formula Ford. Everything went very well, yeah.
It's an impressive debut then for the Finn in his Tuscan. David Mason, double winner this year, lines up alongside him.
Ballymackiller is going to be quite a good competition for both races, it would seem. all credit to the guys, jumped in a car and gone straight on the pace, which is no easy thing to do in the TVRs. But it should be good fun. We had a lot of trouble in testing, with various suspension setup, and then we had a diff blow in the second session. So we've ironed out all those little problems and seem to be back where we should be.
Second row of the grid, Richard Hay and Lee Caroline, the championship leader. The circuit wet, the lights go out, away they go. Some are on wet tyres, most are on slicks, and hope that it dries out quickly enough. And up towards paddock they go for the first time. Ballymackler a bit slow away. They come charging past him on either side, and David Mason leads. Lee Caroline second. Caroline, one of the few who's on wet tyres. Philip Keane third. Mackler fourth. And up towards Druids they come for the first time then. Mackler, the Finn, going around the outside of Lee Caroline. A lot is expected of Mackler here in his first ever Tuscan races. He drove so well in qualifying to snatch pole position. What's he going to be able to do in the races? He slides his way down towards Graham Hill Bend, third at the moment. He's got Philip Keane tucked up behind in fourth, Richard Hay fifth, Darren Downing sixth, and then Tim Hood seventh, but it's David Mason leading, but Lee Caroline on his wet tyres now. He's getting away from those behind, and he's starting to close on the leader. Somebody off there, that's Jan Persson going across the grass, back onto the circuit, then off again, I'm afraid. Jan Persson, whoops, sliding back on right in front of us. We're on board with Phil James in the X-Band Samuelson car, as now the leaders side by side make their way past the pits. Lee Caroline takes the lead here. It's a 10-lap race, this first of the two races, and Lee Caroline leading at the end of lap one. David Mason pushed down to second, third is Mackler, fourth is Philip Keane, fifth is Richard Hay, sixth is Darren Dowling. Up they come towards Druids, and if Lee Caroline can hang on in there and score another victory, he's ninth of the year, he'll take the championship, and that's Jan Persson going off again, and this time going off for good. Lucky not to get involved with anybody else there as they were trying to turn into the corner, but Jan Persson with a rather bizarre approach to Druids out of the race, and now Philip Keane is up alongside this man, Ballymackler. Goes through up on the inside, Keane grabs the place, Caroline leading Mason then. Phil Keane third, Ballymackler down to fourth. It could be fifth in a moment because now Richard Hay looking for a way past him as well. Hay really is the only other opposition that Caroline has, and Richard a bit too far down really now to upset the apple cart in the championship. He's up alongside Ballymackler. Up they come across the start and finish line. Hay splitting his time this weekend between Tuscans and the British GT Championship. Mackler likewise with Tuscans and Formula Ford. Out of paddock, who's going to be third, fourth and fifth? It's Keane third, fourth is Mackler, Richard Hay still fifth. But up front, Lee Caroline edging now closer towards a second successive championship. Coming out of Druids once more, down now towards Graham Hill Bend. There you can see in the background the black car of Richard Hay with Darren Dowling not that far adrift. Then Tim Hood going through. And Tim Hood tiptoeing his way around on a circuit that is still damp, but it's drying and drying quickly. But the way that Lee Caroline is going sure-footed on these wet tyres really suggests that he has made the right gamble, the right choice on the tyres here. Darren Dowling through in pursuit of Richard Hay. Then Tim Hood also being a little bit careful in these conditions. And Hay accelerating his way now up through Clark Curve, up towards the start and finish line once again. Another twitch there as he comes across the line. Hay comes through, Dowling tucked up behind him. This is the view from on board with Fiona Leggett, having her first TVR Tuscan races. Rob Stanton ahead and a rather sideways Hugh Marshall loses it, and thankfully the pair of them just able to avoid him there. That was very close indeed. You can see how slippery it still is. Hugh Marshall just shows the throttle pedal his foot, the car swaps ends on him, and thankfully Stanton and Leggett able to survive, but that was very close indeed. Darren Dowling there going through. He's managed now to keep Tim Hood at bay. He's also looking to close on Richard Hay, but Ballymackler is pulling away from the Worcestershire driver. Dowling up through Surtees and onto McLaren. There you can see Tim Hood sliding through in the background. The Leicestershire driver tucked up behind Watford's Darren Dowling as Hay now powers his way once more up towards the line. Hood goes through, Dowling a little bit sideways, but Lee Caroline, the race leader, still holding sway at the front. He's not, though, pulling away from David Mason. Mackler going a little bit wide into paddock there. Lee Caroline leading, David Mason is second, but the gap between the pair of them is not opening up markedly. Keane third, Mackler fourth, then Richard Hay going through in fifth place. He's had 4 wins this year. He's been Caroline's main opposition to the championship, but it looks now as though Caroline, former pickup truck champion, former mini stocks champion, former hot rod star, is about to put his hands on a second successive championship. Mason second and Philip Keane third in this race, and it looks now as though Philip Keane is starting to close a little bit. Up they come towards Surtees and then McLaren, and as the road starts to dry, of course, so those wet tyres that Lee Caroline is on start to go against him. The leading trio then up over the line, Keane catching Mason, Mason catching Caroline. Mason and Keane, remember, on slicks. Wet tyres for Lee Caroline. And there, Philip Keane having a look on the inside to try and wrestle second place away from Mason, and he's done it. Philip Keane